Good afternoon. Welcome to the Township of Whitewater Region Regular Council meeting for Wednesday, October 6, 2021 at 4:47 p.m. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of the Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of the people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Please stand for the prayer. Almighty God, we give thanks for the great blessings for which have been bestowed on Canada and its citizens, including the gifts of freedom, opportunity, and peace that we enjoy. Guide us in our deliberations as Township Councillors and strengthen us in our awareness of our duties and responsibilities. Grant us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to preserve the blessings of this country for the benefit of all and to make good laws and wise decisions. Amen. So at this time, I'd ask any council members any disclosure of interest for this evening. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 4.1, public meeting for zoning. Zoning bylaw, part of Lot 20, Westmeath Concession BEML. Zoning bylaw amendment, part of Lot 20, Westmeath Concession BML, 28th of September 2021. And we go to Ivan.
Thanks so much. I'll just read through a quick planner statement. So if any person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submission to the Township of Whitewater Region before the bylaws passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the local planning appeal tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of any appeal to the LPAT or local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Under Section 3411 of the Planning Act, it states that if council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application within 120 days of the municipal clerk receiving the application, the applicant or the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. And under Section 3419 of the Planning Act, it states that not later than 20 days after giving notice of the passing of a bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral or written submissions to the township before the bylaw was passed by council may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Thanks.
This is for Indian Road, part of Lot 20, Westmeath Concession BEML. Will staff please give an overview of the application?
Yeah, thanks. So the present zoning amendment is a condition of approval for a severance application that was approved by the Committee of Adjustment on July 8th. Essentially, the proposal for the severance was to create a new vacant residential lot shown in red here on the map. Both properties are quite large. One is 10 acres, the other would be 50 acres. However, their road frontage on Indian Road does not comply with the zoning. So the zoning bylaw requires 45 meters, and in the present case, they're approximately 41 or 42 meters. So the zoning is proposed to reduce the lot frontage from 45 meters to 35 meters. Staff are supportive of this. One key thing to note here is that at the front of the retained property, the large parcel, there is a bit of a local wetland there. So we are going to be requiring that there only be one entrance onto Indian Road. It is a little bit of a windy bend there. So there'll be only one entrance to these two lots. They will both have frontage and have direct access to the road, but there'll be just one entrance which is existing. So one property will have right of way over the other. So staff are supportive of this, and we're seeking council's consideration. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I understand no one has registered to speak on no comments were received, and clerk will confirm. There's no one in queue. Okay, thank you. So the motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the property described as part of Lot 20, Westmeath Concession BEML, Indian Road. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Olmsted, thank you. So now we open it up to questions. Any questions? Councillor McLaughlin.
Just wondering if Lane has been, because you were talking about the entranceway, has anybody consulted the roads or at Public Works on that one? Ivan, do you know?
Yeah, so both the severance file and the zoning amendment were circulated internally to the departments, and there were no comments or objections received from the Public Works Department.
Okay, well, that answers my question then.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. The next zoning amendment is for property located at part of Lot 13, Concession 12, Voyageur Bay Trail. And also in development agreement with private road agreement, bracket, Katharine, Kowalski, bracket. Will the planner please give an overview of the application?
Yeah, thanks. So the present zoning amendment, again, is a condition of a severance that was approved by the committee in May or July of this year. Essentially what the applicant has filed is for severance of 2 lots, both being approximately 1 acre in size. So these lands were previously zoned to be in a LSR, so limited service residential zone, with a holding, and that holding required the owner to do several studies in order to remove that holding. So those studies have now been removed. And the present application for rezoning ultimately is just to remove that holding and allow ultimately for development. So holding is placed on a property to essentially show council support of the development, however, restrict development until certain studies are done, and those studies have now been done. And the second part of the report pertains to a development agreement. So similarly to what's been done in the past, so this property fronts on Voyageur Bay Trail, which is a private road. The report in front of you speaks to a development private road agreement, and the intended purpose of that agreement is to extend the private road and ensure development occurs in accordance with the reports and studies that were submitted with the application. So staff are supportive of this. I understand that the agent of the owner is perhaps on the Zoom call, so I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant willing to speak? Clerk?
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Ivan. It's a pretty straightforward application for zoning bylaw amendment to lift the holding symbol. Ivan's prepared a pretty comprehensive report. We've been working closely with him to provide all the studies. We dropped off a copy of the archaeology study today, which was favorable. They didn't find anything except an old boot, and Joe smiles. And yeah, and all the studies have been completed, and we'll work with Ivan to on the agreement and the outstanding conditions that are required to finalize the severances. And I know Mr. Kowalski's eager to get these lots approved, and he may also have a few comments that he'd like to make. So I'll turn it over to Joe.
Okay, Joe.
I think you're muted, Joe.
He's not coming through if he's talking.
Yeah. You're muted, Joe. There you go.
Okay. Oh, I just said that the Brian is far more qualified to talk about the planning issues than myself. I just that side is just not my forte.
Okay, thanks, Joe. So at this time then, I'll read the motion. The motion is, 1, that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the property described as part of Lot 13, Concession 12, Voyageur Bay. 2, that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to authorize the Township to enter into a development/private road agreement with Katharine, Kowalski to implement requirements to extend the private road known as Voyageur Bay Trail and develop in accordance with the approval of site plans and reports and studies, and advise purchasers that studies and agreements apply to the lands purchased and may provide condition on the use of the property. Can I get a first and a seconder, please? Mover and a seconder. Reimbursement and Councillor McLaughlin. Any questions at this time? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
The last zoning amendment is, the next zoning amendment is for the property located at part of Lot 13, Concession 12, Voyageur Bay, and is also a development agreement and private road agreement, bracket Joseph Kowalski. Will the planner give an overview, please?
Yeah, thanks again. So this zoning amendment is extremely similar to the one we've just viewed. There's only one slight difference. So in this case, we're removing the holding symbol for these two lots. These two lots were created by severance, and these properties are on lands owned by Mr. Joseph Kowalski. The one lot only has 20 meters of frontage, whereas the zoning bylaw does require a frontage of 35 meters. So while we would remove the holding symbol for these two lots, we'd also reduce the minimum lot frontage for the property, having the severance file D10-122 down to 19 meters. You see it on the map here in front of you. It's on sort of the cul-de-sac at the end of this private road, and that's as a result of that, the frontage is slightly less, but the lot is still at the similar size of 1 acre, just over 1 acre. And secondly, the development agreement is being proposed here as well for the private road and the development according to the reports and studies. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. What?
Take it over, see if Brian wants to talk.
Okay. Brian, would you like to speak on this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no additional comments to add for this. Everything seems to be in order.
Okay.
So,
Is Joe on this call too? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Joe, would you like to speak on this?
I would not be able to add anything else to what Brian said.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So the motion is that the Council of the Township of Region, right, the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve an amendment to the zoning category of the property described as Part Lot 13, Concession 12, Voyageur Bay. 2, that Council of the Township of Whitewater Region enact a bylaw to authorize the Township to enter into a development/private road agreement with Katharine Kowalski to implement requirements to extend the private road known as Voyageur Bay, developed in accordance with the approval of the site plans and reports and studies, and advise the purchasers that the studies and agreements apply to the lands purchased and may be provided conditions on the use of the property. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Olmsted and Councillor Jackson. Discussion? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. The last zoning amendment is the next zoning amendment for the property located at part of Lot 13, Concession 12, Voyageur Bay, and is also the Did we do that already? Are we done?
Yeah.
Oh. We were on a move there. We were rolling. I was going to give everything away. But we haven't done that one yet.
Yeah, you did, you were doing on.
Oh,
It's exactly the same.
okay. All right, thank you. So now we are,
We're going to the Warden now.
okay, now we're moving on to 4.4, overview of Renfrew County Services. Warden Robinson and delegation, please.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Warden.
Waiting for
Oh, there we go.
all of my
Okay, we can see you now.
my friends and to show up with me. So I'm very pleased to be here today to talk to you a little bit about the county of Renfrew. First, though, I'd like to tell you that it is my pleasure to be serving on county council with your Reeve, Kathy Regier. You are very, very well represented by Kathy, and it's indeed a pleasure. So I suspect that she probably tells you what's happening at the county of Renfrew on a fairly regular basis. So some of the things you may hear about today, you've already heard, but the gentleman with me will give you much more in-depth view of some of the changes that are happening. So with me today, of course, is our CAO, Paul Morrow, who I'm sure you know all three of these gentlemen. So Paul Morrow, the CAO, our Director of Corporate Services, Jeff Foss, and our Director of Development and Property, Craig Kelly. So I'm just going to do a quick little overview of what's been happening over the last 2.5, 3 years at the county. Don't know if you heard, there's a pandemic. So we've been a little bit busy in that regard as well. But in early 2019, the staff brought to County Council a proposal to look at some of the ways that we could deliver services to lower tier municipalities and to our residents in a more efficient manner. And it was well received by County Council, and we decided to move forward. And basically what was happening is we were bringing our Ontario Works, our childcare, and our Renfrew County Housing Authority that were all located actually in downtown Pembroke back to the administration building. That alone saves us approximately $380,000 a year on private lease rentals. At the same time, of course, we know that the province started talking about efficiencies as well, and we received $750,000 in modernization funding to help us find efficiencies. The timing was fantastic. We hired consultants, we had a design created, and then again, the pandemic hit. There was some pivoting, some redesign. So at the end of the day, the renovations at the county building took about 14 months. During that time, our staff sometimes were working inside the building, sometimes they were working remotely. But I have to tell you, I'm very, very proud to say that we continued operating as best we could to serve all of the residents of the county of Renfrew and our lower tiers. The benefit of doing that initial service delivery improvement project was that we also found some opportunities to really look at some different departments. For our human resources department, during the transition and the changes, there was some management changes that allowed us to look very closely at what we do as far as human resources and how to improve. And we're very, very fortunate that the Director of Corporate Services, Jeff Foss, had a vision, and he will share that with you this afternoon. At the same time, we found some extra funding that we could do a really in-depth look at our planning department. Again, there were some changes there, some retirements, and gave us an opportunity to look at what we were doing, to look at the workflow and how to serve everyone better and quicker, quite honestly. And there we have our Director of Development Property, Craig Kelly, who will tell you all about all of the changes that I think it's very exciting. As we come out of this pandemic, we want economic recovery, and the planning department is ready to do everything it can to help all of our local municipalities. So with that very quick introduction, I will turn it over to Mr. Morrow, who then will introduce the other gentleman with me this evening.
Thank you for that, Warden, and appreciate the overview. And with that, if I may, Your Worship, I'll turn it right over to Craig, and we'll talk about the service delivery review and the deep dive we did into our planning department and what that looks like for us in the next couple of years. So, Craig, if you wouldn't mind taking it away.
Thanks, Paul. So good evening, good afternoon. It's a beautiful day. Hopefully your council member is short today and you can all get out and enjoy the wonderful day. Lots of changes in the planning department. Mr. Cheeseman, of course, retired earlier this spring, and we promoted from within one of our senior planners, who's now our manager of planning services, Bruce Howarth, who, of course, your staff will know and will continue to work with. Another big change that happened this year, in particular with Whitewater region, of course, was the request and approval of delegated authority. So our relationship has changed quite a bit with the Whitewater region over the last little while. And interesting to hear some planning files just before we got on to see how things are evolving at Whitewater. Of course, now we're not as involved with Whitewater region as we once were. We do not handle, of course, your zoning with a very capable planner on your staff now who handles your zoning and your minor variances. And now you handle your own severances and consent files. So that is a change for us. On the other hand, we are still witnessing incredible growth and still lots of general inquiries across the county of Renfrew, and we're still offering those those services to many municipalities and are looking at increasing our own capacity by bringing a new junior planner on in the early in the new year to backfill some of the positions that we had, and are going to make the case to increase one more junior planner in the coming weeks with committee and council, as our planning inquiries are going through the roof, if you will, moving forward. So those are big changes. At the same time, we're also looking at e-permitting along with many municipalities and how the new digital world is evolving. And Jeff is leading a digital strategy for the whole county of Renfrew. And we will be a part of that to see where our GIS and our e-permitting and our notification system fits in an electronic world, ultimately trying to make it easier for the taxpayer or the wannabe taxpayer to be a developer and develop their property in this area. So that's a big task. Our official plan was just passed, thankfully, with some great amendments for all municipalities earlier this summer. And we'll be going out to many of the municipalities to work with them on our zoning bylaws and changing those and get them up to date. Of course, again, your planner will likely be doing it on your own. I'm aware that you're also looking at different studies with a consultant to update yours on your behalf as you move forward. So different relationship we have with Whitewater Region. We're still very happy to work with Ivan. We still do, and happy to work on one, if not 2 or 3 subdivisions that are just coming in to Whitewater Region and the Cobden area, and watching your township grow. So happy to assist where we can. While I have the screen or the microphone, I'd be remiss not to mention the other sides of my portfolio. Of course, with economic development, happy to assist again, Ivan, where requested to do so. And trails. Earlier this summer, we completed the stone dusting of the Algonquin Trail from Renfrew into Cobden, and beginning next week or later this week, the stone dust machine, if you will start stone dusting from Cobden into Laurentian Valley and into Pembroke, completing the Algonquin Trail then from basically Pembroke all the way to Smiths Falls. And we believe that that's a huge economic driver for Whitewater Region, and otherwise as a municipality who's adopted bicycle-friendly communities and economic development with snowmobiles and ATVs. So we're happy that those things continue moving ahead from the county perspective. I think that I'll leave that for now, Paul, and leave it for questions, and perhaps turn it to Mr. Foss for his side of his story.
Well, thank you, Craig, and good afternoon to all of the council members at Whitewater. My pleasure to speak with you today a little bit about what's going on with corporate services. And I'm the director of corporate services, and historically that involved the finance department and information technology, as well as our provincial offenses court. And then fairly recently, corporate services was merged with our human resources department. And so that's a new responsibility area for me. And as the warden said, we brought forward to county council early in 2021 a business plan to really restructure and redesign how we deliver human resource services throughout the county of Renfrew. And so we changed our model, and that really meant putting a new team in place. And so we were actively recruiting for those team members beginning the 1st of March in 2021. Starting with the new manager. And so we've hired a gentleman by the name of Greg Belmore. Greg is a CPA and comes to us from the private sector with about a decade of experience in the private sector. And to that, we have also added to that complement a number of very qualified human resource professionals. These are folks that have undergraduate backgrounds in business administration and commerce, political science, some of them, but all of them have graduate certificates in human resources, and all members of the Human Resources Professional Association of Ontario. And these folks bring with them a wealth of experience and expertise in dealing with all sorts of matters that are human resource leaders. And certainly we have a very large workforce. We have about 850 staff across throughout the geography of Renfrew County. And so that's a very busy and active shop. But one of the things that we did when we put the business plan forward to county council in the spring was to hire one additional resource, one new staff member. And that additional resource. The intention was to share that resource with all of our local municipalities. We understand, that it's very challenging for some of our municipalities to have the ability to have a human resource professional working on staff within the municipality. First of all, recruiting that person, and then ensuring that they are trained and that they are aware of and on top of all of the legislative challenges that are taking place for all of us these days. Certainly in the middle of COVID, we had just a nonstop impact on our human resources. And so being able to deal with that in an adequate way is really, really important. So we've hired an additional resource, and County Council has approved a plan where that resource is available to all of your municipalities on a cost recovery or a fee for service basis. Council has directed that essentially all municipalities have a full day or 7 non-chargeable hours of human resource services. So in a way, every municipality has an opportunity to sort of test drive this new department and this new service if you have some needs. And what are the kind of services that this staff might be able to assist you with? Well, of course, we all understand all of the activities that are involved with recruiting. That comes right from the job posting and development of job descriptions. This is, kind of coordinating and managing all of the applications that you get, scheduling and coordinating interviews, participating in the interview process if you need us to do that, providing recommendations on hiring if you'd like us to participate in that as well, and then even drafting employment contracts for that relationship in the future. If you have bargaining units, of course, there is collective agreement and collective bargaining negotiations that we can assist with or help to prepare your team for. If you have a collective agreement, of course, that generally involves some sort of issues resolution or grievance management, conflict resolution, letters of understanding with your union. You may need some assistance with policy creation or interpretation. Unfortunately, in today's environment, human resource professionals are often called on for employee investigations and disciplinary matters, up to and including termination of employment. We can also assist with, pay equity and job evaluation systems. It's also important to understand that our HR team is not only HR professionals, but we do have a registered nurse who's been working with us for a significant amount of time. And she is a specialist in occupational health, keeping our workforce working safely, but also managing those illnesses where employees are out of the workforce and all of that interaction that's involved to get them to return to work, sometimes on a temporary modified basis. But we certainly have some experience and skill sets in that area as well. I think really my main message to you is that Council has provided an additional resource, and if you need assistance in any of these areas, we're more than happy to talk to you about that and see if we can help your municipality. These folks, as I mentioned, have a great deal of experience in working with labor law and certainly municipal human resource matters. You're probably not coming across a situation that they're unfamiliar with. And so please reach out to our office, and if you need any assistance, and we'll be happy to help. And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for that, Jeff. And your worship, if I may, just for a second, Craig provided a bit of an overview of where we are with the planning department. And I think one of our biggest accomplishments this year was the approval of OPA 31, as I believe you mentioned. But what's yet to come for us is the approval of zoning bylaws, which is a critical piece that we're looking forward to working with your planner on and moving that forward. I think our goal is to coordinate comprehensive zoning bylaws for the county as a whole, and so that we have a common look and feel across the county of Renfrew. But at the same time, we provide options for each local municipality to pick and choose what their interests are at the local level as well. So, Craig talks about a bit of a drop-down list and where you can pick. And so we will be working with your local planner on those options moving forward. So with Jeff, I think, Jeff has made some significant progress as the Director of Corporate Services with our HR department. And I think the services that we're providing, and I know we're working on some active files for other local municipalities right now, we're seeing the benefits of the expertise and support that we've brought into the County of Renfrew. So Your Worship, with that, I'll turn it over to you or the Warden for final comments. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to the Warden, please.
Well, thank you, Mayor Moore. So I guess we're really open for any questions or comments that any of your members of council have. Again, this is a process that we're trying to do at all 17 lower municipalities in the next 2 months. And every presentation is just a little bit different depending on the needs and the interests of the council. So we are certainly open to any comments or questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. So I'll turn it over to council members. Any questions, please? Councillor Mackay, please identify yourself when you go to speak.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Mackay from Whitewater. I just wonder about the Algonquin Trail. Who can use that trail? What is that made for?
Happy to answer that if I can. It's Craig. Councillor McKay, through you, Mayor. It is made for anybody that would like to. It's a multi-use trail from walkers, cyclists, ATVers, snowmobilers, horseback riders, and otherwise. The only permit structure we have in place right now is for snowmobilers in the wintertime, where they are required to have an OFSC permit, as it is a prescribed trail for users. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else with a question? Councillor Jackson, please. Please identify yourself.
Hi, Councillor Jackson speaking. I saw on Facebook, I think through the Ottawa Valley Bike Association, that there was some portion of the trail that hasn't been maintained. Is that going to get maintained? There's some concern that with the four-wheelers or the side-by-sides going down, that all of the stone dust has been removed. And you can tell by the picture that they posted is that there's just tire tracks and the stone dust is off to the side, sort of thing. How often does the trail get maintained, and who does that maintenance?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yes, so it is our responsibility to maintain it. We saw the photos and we're aware of that area. Strangely, we learn as we go. So in that area, we applied a little bit thinner stone dust through that area to extend the stone dust in our budget further than we had money for, quite honestly. So we learned our lesson. We won't do that again. But what's happening is, of course, the ATVs are heavier than bicycles, if you can believe that, and they're creating a hard packed stone dust, and the looser items are off to the side. So we are busy concentrating our budget other places this year, and towards this end of the season as we go. But we have identified that area, and we'll be looking at grading and adding additional stone dust likely into the early part of 2022.
Yeah, it was between Renfrew and Armpire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson, did you have a question? Please identify yourself.
Yes, Councillor Nicholson, and thank you, Warden and staff, for making the time to come out with us. I know there's 17 presentations for you to do, so I can appreciate the investment of your time and really appreciate it. I had a question. It's related to planning, I believe. Ivan continues to counsel me on this stuff, but we had a seniors housing strategy that was released at the county level, the study that had been done in early 2001. And I'm just wondering, with all the changes that are going on now with the staffing and reorientating, is there any forecast on how we might start to address some of the recommendations that were listed in that housing strategy?
I don't think they can see you, Paul, so maybe just...
Oh, sorry, Your Worship.
Yeah, I would ask Paul to answer that, please.
Thank you. Your Worship, if I may, through you to Councillor Nicholson. Actually, and I'm aware of the strategy, and it was great work that was done by your municipality. It actually, in my opinion, overlaps probably 3 areas of business for us. It overlaps our community services department in terms of our seniors housing strategy work that was done jointly with long-term care, community services, and with Craig's support through planning and economic development. So it touches on all those areas. In terms of moving the yardsticks forward on it, right now we're at the point where we're looking for money to grow housing opportunities within our community. Hopefully we will see some approvals from the province in the near future. And with that, we would go out to an RFP for, seniors housing, low income housing, all those things. But, we know more than anyone the demand, especially through our community services department, of the demand for low income seniors housing throughout the county as a whole. So we get it's important. The challenge is finding the necessary financial resources to get it done on the ground and start to have those conversations with private partnerships or private sector partners to move the yardsticks on growing those local developments. So I'll leave it at that. I know the warden has some thoughts on it as well. She's very passionate about it and might have something to add. So thank you.
If I may, Mayor Moore, I think Paul saw me squirming in my chair, so thanks for that intro. So absolutely, attainable and affordable housing is an issue, obviously, across Ontario, but specifically in Eastern Ontario. And when I'm sitting at the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, that is one of our priorities. And yes, seniors need affordable housing, but so do young families and so do single people. And it's just not out there. So that is something that we're, pushing constantly with the province. The province recognizes it. I will give you that. And certainly MPP John Yakubowski is very aware of the need in Renfrew County. So as we move forward and continue our advocacy, I'm feeling hopeful that, in the next year or so that we will see some new development happening for community housing. But thank you for your question, Councillor Nicholson.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin, did you have a question?
I did. I thought when we had the presentation from the ATV Association, and what I was aware that if you were going to travel the Algonquin Trail, you had to have a pass. Is that correct? Or I think when Craig was talking, he said it was only snowmobiles?
I can absolutely answer that through you, Mayor. So to clarify, the entire Ottawa Valley Recreational Trail, and this is where it gets a little confusing, it's got 2 names. The entire length is, the granddaddy name is the Ottawa Valley Recreational Trail. In Renfrew County, it's the Algonquin Trail. Lanark County, who own the section in the partnership between Smiths Falls and Arnprior, have elected to have a permit system through OFATV, of which Renfrew County ATV Club is a member of OFATV. So from Arnprior to Smiths Falls, you are required to have a permit. In the section of our trail, the Algonquin Trail, it is nice and a courtesy to have a permit, but not a requirement through a bylaw or through otherwise. So no, there's no requirement, but it'd be awfully nice because the RCATV does contribute to the trail through work and through assistance to us as we go. Now, when you travel off of the Algonquin Trail to parcels including the CN rail, let's say, CN into Algonquin Park, from Pembroke MDF onwards, that is an ATV, RCATV trail that a permit is required. It's confusing. There is some maps on the app that specify where and when to go with a permit. Thank you, Councillor.
If I may, that's and I'm really glad, Craig, to get the clarification, because I've been asked as well, and I totally agree with you because I bought my permit. And obviously, the way you're talking, you can only travel in Renfrew County, and if you go out of Renfrew County, then you need a permit. So.
Yeah, so when you get ice cream in Pakenham, you need to have a permit ahead of time.
Yeah, just to solve all the confusion, I agree with you, just be politically proactive and just buy a permit. But because I'd been asked if we could travel on the trail from Cobden to Turcotte Road without a permit. And I said, I don't think so, but now I understand, yes, you can. Yep. So thank you very much, Craig, for your information. I appreciate it.
Very welcome, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Reimbursement would like to speak. Thank you.
Just a final comment. I just want to say, first all, thank you, Warden Robinson, for your very kind words at the start. And I just want to say thank you all for joining us this evening. We do appreciate your time and for answering all of our questions. It's great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So at this point then, I would like to sign off and say thank you very much to Debbie and your group for coming to see us. It's the first time I've ever seen this type of a virtual meeting, so at our council meeting, so it's very nice, and that's one good thing that has come out of COVID, that we're all getting together like this, where it wouldn't happen before. So thank you all very much for your time, and I appreciate the work you put into our interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We enjoyed seeing you, and hopefully next time you come around, it might be actually in person. Take care and have a great evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to announcements, please. Reimbursement.
Thank you very much, Mayor Moore. I have a couple here. So first off, Council Lead of Human Resources, I am pleased to announce that Kyle Eady joined our team on October the 4th as Roads Superintendent. He brings construction and roads experience, having worked with Thomas Kavanagh Construction Limited for 12 years. Since 2014, he has managed teams as road crew foreman on major projects, including the Stewart Street rehabilitation in Renfrew and Highway 417 expansion in Canada. He began as a surveyor, assistant as Kavanagh, and as a summer student in Horton Township. We are confident Mr. Eady has the skill set to lead the roads team, having worked with large teams to complete projects on time and on budget. I also want to thank Randy Buchwald for his leadership since 2017 with the roads crew. Randy is an important part of our Whitewater Region team and will continue to assist with roads operations. He will also be sharing his knowledge through the joint roads operational review being undertaken with Admaston Bromley and Greater Madawaska in 2021 to 2022, which is funded by the province through the Municipal Modernization Program. He will also be undertaking some data collection and field work for asset management. And second, I am pleased to announce that Scott Hamilton has accepted the position of Business Outreach Officer. It's a contract, a 12-month term, which is funded in part by the Provincial Rural Economic Development Grant. Scott has completed his bachelor's degree in hospitality and tourism management from Algonquin College and has been involved with the region's agricultural community and other local industries. Scott will be starting with the township on October the 19th and will be undertaking the Township Business Restart, Retention and Expansion Program. So if you see these two gentlemen out and about, I just ask that you give them a warm welcome on behalf of Whitewater. And my final announcement is there is a pop-up vaccination clinic that just came available this Friday, October the 8th, at the Cobden Agricultural Society from 11 to 3. So if there's anyone that requires immunization, that just became available early this week. So, and that is correct. I'm sorry, it is walk-in only. Yep. And that's everything. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
I hate going after the reef. Otherwise, I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
I just have one thing to report. I think there is a walk the runway in support of the Pembrokeshire area airport on October the 20th. I think I will check that date again. I think tentatively that's out there. So Other than that, no, I have no other comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
I do have comments. This Saturday, we'll be having the Fall Festival at the Fairgrounds, which will be demolition derby, bouncy castles and other things for kids. I can't remember the numerous things to climb on. We're also having a pork dinner put on by Neil Hawthorne, and it's $10 for adults, $5 for kids, and kids under 5 is free. And I hope all you guys can have a chance to come on out and enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Fireworks? You missed fireworks.
Oh, sorry, fireworks, you don't need, doesn't cost you anything to come to the fireworks. You can come later, probably after 7. Thank you.
Where?
Beechburg Fairgrounds, where else? The center of the world.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson.
Nothing other than I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving this weekend and be safe. And
Thank you. Greatly appreciated. Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to acknowledge the WDRA's event last week, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. They had a small event, and it was pretty well attended for its first inaugural event, and I think that steps for next year, maybe to encourage other community associations or volunteer organizations in the community to do similar things, and maybe we can find a way to support them as a township. So I think it was very successful. I like the fact we had our 2 flags up, and I think we can do more next year. Second thing is just my biannual or bi-monthly reminder of our Seniors Support Center and Active Living. It's open for walk-in drop-ins Mondays all day, Fridays all day, and Wednesday mornings. Plus you can leave a message or send an email at any time. You can get all kinds of support there, including frozen meals, transportation for a variety of reasons. You can volunteer to help other seniors. You can ask for help to get your groceries. You name it, it's a one-stop shop for the seniors in our community. So please encourage those that you might engage with to use it. And our last one is some good news. The CRC out of Killaloe has reached out, and they received a grant to offer after school, not childcare, after school activities. Sorry, what was it called, Rob? Programs. So they're proposing to start one. They're just checking 2 locations right now, either Beechburg or Westmeath, to see if they could host it there. And then depending on its success, it could be expanded within the community. So very great to see the Community Resource Center at Killaloe being able to stretch out and support us in our location. And hopefully we'll have some good news and see it start closer to the end of October. Community Resource Center in Killaloe.
Okay, thank you. We received a card of thank you from Cheryl Gallant's office, meaning Cheryl Gallant herself. She used our downstairs for federal matters for anyone within our township that needed help and assistance, and she was quite impressed with the turnout. So thank you to Cheryl for that. Also, starting this Thursday, which is tomorrow night, Papa walks again. Papa will be walking for Hospice Renfrew this time. Apparently they're in need of some furniture, so Papa has decided he's going to put his name out there and he's going to walk again, only this time he's sticking within the county. The kickoff will be tomorrow evening at St. Andrews United, Main Street, Beechburg. That will be his kickoff from 5 until 6. And then you'll be able to get more information after that as to where he's going to be. October 9th, he will be in Pembroke, Cobden, and Westmeath, but I'm just not sure of the times. So if you come on out tomorrow night, you can find out all that information and maybe give them a little donation on his successful walks. It's all going to take part this weekend. So hopefully we wish him well, and hopefully the weather's nice. And that's all my announcements. So if that is it, we will carry on. We go on to 6.1 reports. Lifting of one-foot reserves on Nangor Trail. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the lifting of 2 1-foot reserves along Nangor Trail and to transfer the lands to the adjacent landowners to provide unencumbered access to the adjacent lands. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted and Councillor Mackay, thank you. And this goes to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thank you. So This application was submitted by Don Matthews. He's the owner of the two sides of this strip of land. Essentially, a 1 foot reserve is essentially a 1 foot strip of land that is essentially not held by the township, but provides restrictions on access to the adjacent land. So we own the municipal road here, Nangor Trail, and back in it was in 1984 when the plan of subdivision was approved. The township at the time felt that they should put a 1 foot reserve along this road to restrict access to the adjacent lands until development approvals would be provided. So Mr. Matthews now has been reached out by Rogers Communication in order to put a communication towers adjacent to one of these strips of land, and he's seeking council's approval to lift the 1 foot reserves. So the 1 foot reserves are described as blocks 17 and 18 on that plan of subdivision 532. So staff are supportive of the lifting of these two 1 foot reserves. Any development will require some type of approval from the township, whether it's through severance, whether it's through building permits, entrance permits, or any other development applications that might arise. So we're comfortable in the fact of lifting these 1 foot reserves and allowing a development to proceed on the adjacent lands. In this case, the 1 foot reserve is on private property, so it'll just be, we just lift the 1 foot reserve and the property is held by privately held property owners. So staff are supportive and we're looking for council consideration. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor McLaughlin.
So Ivan, I take from there that there will be no legal fees or anything in that that we're going to be responsible for? Is that correct?
There will be legal fees. We will not be responsible for them. So Mr. Matthews, from what I understand on past experience, need to register the bylaw that gets passed. So that registration would be done by Mr. Matthews' lawyer.
Okay. Yeah. No, I have no problems as long as we're not doing any legal costs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.2, lease agreement and fee reimbursement, Whitewater Internet Solutions, Inc. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the entering into lease agreement with the Whitewater Internet Solutions, Inc. to govern the installation of equipment of radio communications equipment on the municipal properties known as 44 Gould Street and 990 Colesmith Road. Number 2, that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve a fee reimbursement request for the 5 site plan control applications filed by Whitewater Internet Solutions, Inc. Is that it? Motion and seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Reimbursement. Ivan, please.
Thank you. So I'll speak firstly about the lease agreement. So council may remember on September 1st, council considered 5 site plan control applications submitted by Whitewater Internet Solutions. So 5 site plan applications for 5 separate tower locations throughout the township. One tower location was at 990 Colesmith Road, which is our current location of our landfill. So in exchange for the use of the property to construct their tower, council had supported or directed staff to bring forward a lease agreement with Whitewater Internet. So Whitewater Internet has also presented some interest in 44 Gould Street, the location of our water tower here in Cobden. NRTC entered into a lease agreement with the township about a year and change ago, and they're looking to do a similar thing to put their infrastructure on the tower to expand their broadband network throughout the township. I will note that on the tower itself in this lease agreement, so back in as part of the 2021 budget deliberations, council did approve a budget item in the value of $65,000. So the fire department was seeking to expand their communication network in the township, and they were proposing to actually construct their own tower. And ultimately, it was determined that it would be more feasible, if you will, or more feasible to get a private company install the tower, and we would fix our equipment on their tower. So the proposal here with the tower at the landfill location, we do have support from Whitewater Internet to install our infrastructure. So the fire department would purchase the equipment and they would install the communication devices on that tower at 990 Colesmith Road. And the fire department's also seeking to install communication towers on another tower. So there's a tower on Bromley Line, and I think there's another tower on Lookout Road, so they're trying to examine which would be the best location. But that would come in 2022 or subsequent year. Just quick summary of the agreement. So the agreement's intended to ensure that the equipment conforms to our requirements, the terms of the use, financial requirements, details of frequency, design and maintenance, and the like. The agreement is a 10-year term. It is with renewals for 5-year terms. In exchange for the lease of the land and the use of the tower, Whitewater Internet is prepared to provide internet service to our landfill building, as well as the municipal garage located on Mineview Road, and the Cobden water treatment plant for the solar operation there. That represents an annual value of approximately $6,000. Further to that, they're allowing the fire department to install their equipment on their towers as well at 2 locations. And so in exchange, we would allow them to lease the land and we would provide a bit of support for site works. So that pertains to the lease agreement. So staff are supportive of that. In relation to the reimbursement of fees, so council, in that $65,000 budget, the tower and equipment was estimated to be about $50,000. So there was going to be some leftover money in that budget line to support local and regional companies to expand the network, their internet network in the township. So back in December 2020, after the budget was passed, council did support Cogeco in one of their initiatives through Foresters Falls to extend fiber in Foresters Falls. So council did support a non-nominal financial contribution of $7,000 to Cogeco. Now, no funds have been distributed at this time to Cogeco, but they're still working on that funding project with the province. So, should council choose to support the reimbursement of the fees, we would use that. We would use that budget line, if you will, for that $4,000 reimbursement. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Jackson.
Just one question. I don't see the lease agreement at all, but will the lease agreement include the property taxes? Who's responsible for property taxes? Because there will be an assessment for that.
So just as a note, to find the agreement, it is attached to the agenda under the bylaw, which is at the end of the council agenda.
Okay.
But the taxes are not spoken of in the agreement. I will confirm that, but I will examine that following council's meeting and add any terminology that we require.
Yep. I think we have other avenues of looking that up to see what types of things that can happen there with regards to the property taxes, but there will be a commercial property tax based against that. So.
Good, thanks.
Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks for bringing this one forward, Ivan. I think it's a perfect example of where we've been able to optimize public and private partnership. And we've not only saved money from a township perspective, but we're offering a better service, both from a fire and from an internet perspective. So I think this is just a perfect example of things that we want to encourage continue to happen, these kinds of partnerships. I think the investment, the waiving of the fees is excellent. I've read tons and tons of material about municipalities all over Ontario investing in their own towers and internet and fiber. We don't have to do that in this case. We're being asked to waive a small fee and the service levels go up dramatically for our community. So to me, another great example, we're able to leverage this partnership. The question that I have has to do with the funding. There was $65,000 set aside for this combined project. We've only used 41. Is the intent for it to remain in a reserve for other similar opportunities that might meet with their strategic initiative? Or is it going to go back into the pot and we're going to fight about it in the future?
Maybe I'll just start. So should this reimbursement be approved, so that'd be 4,000, and the fire department hasn't purchased the equipment yet, so I'm not sure what that, if it's 41, 43, or I'm not sure what the amount is. I just want to make a note of that, and then I'll leave it to Sean to speak to whether or not the additional funds could be in a reserve or not.
So I believe at this current time, I mean, it would be up to council to make that decision during a budget deliberations, but that money that's earmarked for this project is from the modernization efficiency money, the original money we got. So we would have to reevaluate, depending on where this project comes in, what money's left, and then reevaluate, is it going to go to this similar area, or are there other areas of efficiency that we can put that small balance towards? I feel like it was going to be less than $20,000. So, but we would do that during a budget deliberation.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. And Ivan.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin? No, sorry, Councillor Mackay. I'm looking right at you.
Yeah, I've been dealing with this company for about a year, and I'm very happy with their service compared to analog cable. And I think it's a great idea to have a partnership with them too. Good to deal with.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin?
Yeah, just wondering, Ivan, if we could be somehow, if we wanted to attach our communications to other towers that they would own, if that would be a problem in the near future, if that could be put in the lease agreement?
Yeah, so as part of this agreement, we're proposing they've agreed to allow us to install equipment on 2 of their towers, but definitely if ever the fire department wishes to seek approvals for other towers, I'm sure the company would definitely work with us to get that done.
Yeah, I just wondered, Ivan, if that could be put, somehow incorporated into the lease agreement so that if they sold it, their system, then we would still have at least that agreement. Would that be a possibility?
So there's definitely a provision in the agreement that speaks to if the company gets purchased by someone else and continues to exist, well then the terms of that agreement would continue to apply to the purchaser of their company, if you will. So yeah, there's no question that as long as this agreement continues to exist, and that company continues to exist, then this agreement is binding on that company in the township.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm not expressing myself properly, but I'm thinking if we want to for some reason that we see, oh, we could use one more of their towers. If it was in the lease agreement, then that would just grandfather through. If it's not in the lease agreement, then it doesn't grandfather through. Is that correct?
What I would say is they've accepted for us to install it on 2 of their towers. I mean, they have numerous towers in the community. If I could seek authorization for more towers, but that would again be a negotiation with Whitewater Internet. I'm sure they'd be amenable to that. And if council is acceptable to 2, I could try to get 3 or 4 in the agreement. But if we're satisfied with 2 at this time, we could proceed. But I'll try to speak with Whitewater Internet to include 3 or 4 towers, if you will.
Yeah, that would it would that was my biggest concern. So that if you do that, then it would be solved. Thank you.
Yeah, that brings up a valid point. It wouldn't hurt to have the conversation to see where we stand. They may want to open the agreement for any further installations, but if we don't ask right now, right, we don't know. So, good question.
Well, I think my conversation was with the fire department, so I'm not sure there's a need for a 3rd or 4th tower. But again, I could recommunicate with the fire department on that avenue. I mean, ultimately, we could always consider a separate agreement where we lease space off of their tower. But for now, the sort of exchange of services has been agreed to, and it would just be a matter of negotiating with them to add our equipment potentially to future towers.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.3, Garden Lake Beach waterfront access. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region direct staff to implement signage at the Garden Lake water access and conduct a comprehensive examination for the potential introduction of amenities for discussion in 2023. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and seconder, Councillor Olmsted. And this goes to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks again. So this report is subsequent to council passing a motion back in March relating to the Garden Lake Beach or boat launch property. So they wish for us to examine two things. One is the access, whether or not we have legal access to the property, and secondly, potential amenities to the similar to what is at Little Lakes. So my role in here was primarily to confirm access. So I did reach out to Bill Instance from Bradley Law Professional Corporation, who's our lawyer out of Pembroke. And he did confirm to me that there is in fact legal access over what is called Garden Lake Trail. So from Chenot Road, being a county road, over Garden Lake Trail to the properties. So there's a map here in front of you. So there's two properties that the township owns. The one to the left, if you will, is the one that has access to Garden Lake. And the one to the right is essentially a vacant property with private roads running through it. So the one that has frontage on the lake is 16 acres in size, 16.5 acres, and the other property is 45.8 acres. So I do confirm that there is legal access. In this report, I further outlined some considerations for council should they choose to sort of program this waterfront or water access. So I speak about access by private road. I speak about access, which is quite challenging on some of the private roads because of the sloping terrain, appropriate parking, costs for amenities like shade structures, washrooms, and also impacts to adjacent landowners and waterfront owners. So I will note we did get reached out from several of the adjacent property owners and property owners around the lake, and those comments will be circulated to council should they choose to move forward with any amenities there. So at this time, due to the significant cost and different challenges and constraints that need to be considered, we are proposing to provide signage on the property. So currently there is no signage advising users what they are allowed or not allowed to do. So overnight camping is one thing that shouldn't be occurring there, but it is, from what we understand, occurring there. So daytime use and such other things like that, use at your own risk. So in the interim, between when council decides to move forward with sort of a plan on how to program this beach and boat launch access, we're proposing just at this time to provide signage. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Mackay.
Not a question. I used to own property all along there. It's a quagmire back there. The roads there's not roads. And you'll get into this mess and we won't be able to get out of it. I'm just totally against this. It's just a pit of despair. That's it.
Okay, all right. Good to know, first-hand news. Councillor Jackson.
I've been working in municipal government, and I started off with Ross Township, and that area was Ross Township, 26 years. And prior to that, I know there was issues with camping overnight and all of that. Whether you put picnic tables down there, they get destroyed and burned. The garbage gets destroyed and burned. I am not in favor of doing anything down there. The people that own the properties down there have been put through the ringer. At one point, some owner of the actual road locked the road up and caused major issues and legal costs to the municipality as well as to ratepayers. As far as we have legal access, yes, but my concern is, do we have public legal access? Are we allowed, and I don't want to do it, but was the question ever answered, are we allowed to allow more public to access that road? I know the township owns the property and there is legal access over that road, but The question then becomes, if we're inviting everybody and their dog down to that property, do we actually have that type of access?
Well, I would just say this. So the access is provided over a private road. Most or all of our parks have access through a public road. So if we are promoting the use of these lands for the beach, I would think that we're going to have to start contributing to the cost of the maintenance to the private road, or potentially bring it up to a municipal standard, like to a municipal road. So that is one constraint or consideration that's noted in the report. So there's some substantial cost to that. I don't think we provide any support as it relates to maintenance at this point in time. So that's something, a big ticket item, if you will, to consider moving forward with any amenities there.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just add, just to clarify on the signage, because we know there's been public use down there and people are going down, and there's risk and liability associated with that, I just want to say this, the signage is really about risk and liability and stating ground rules. So it's not going to like, hey, come down here and enjoy. It's like, do not, which insurance companies like us to do. So this report came forward saying it's being used. There's use down there. We know that there was a fish hut that Jordan had to deal with. There was burnt things down there. So we know people are using our property. So I just want to be clear, the signage is from a risk and liability in terms of not permitting any uses. We don't have a park use bylaw. This is technically not a park. But we know people are using it, so the signage is really going to be to be very clear on use at your own risk and not having campfires or overnight camping. So just to be clear on the signage component, it's really from a risk and liability perspective.
Councillor Jackson.
And further, I think whatever signage does go up, it cannot be burnable. So other than that, we'll be wasting our time. And I'd like to separate this motion up because I don't agree with the full motion and I don't know the process to do that. But implement signage, yes. Conduct a comprehensive examination, no. So I look to the clerk or the CAO to split that to two motions rather than...
Yeah. Yeah, so yes, we can split it in two, so somebody can make a motion to, for the signage and then another motion for the, what was it? I'm sorry.
I move to split it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just don't think there should be any money spent. I don't think we should be doing anything down there. I don't think we should encourage it. For the last 26 years of my municipal career, it has never been encouraged. Yes, it does happen, but we certainly don't want to encourage anything else down there. And I'm not in favor of that at all. So.
Okay, so do we have to go back to the mover and the seconder then to have it changed? Or?
No, you can request, the clerk will just note that there was a request to split it. There's two actionable items in there, so they can be voted on separately.
Okay, so the clerk will look after that.
Do I need a seconder for my motion?
No,
Okay.
it can just be a request to split it. You don't need a motion to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we can go ahead with other questions and then we get back to that.
Yeah, and vote on both.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Nicholson, we'll stay on that side of the table and finish that side.
Good. Well, I thank staff for doing the report and basically demystifying this whole spot because I've never been there. All I hear is these rumors, and I guess there's a lot of parties or fires down there, so now I know. From a councillor's perspective, I like the fact that we own this property. I wonder why we own so much. Maybe that's another question for another time, because it's just being used by other people. Maybe we don't need to own it. And the second thing is, and this is going to burn Jordan's ears, but we have a rec master plan. Before we spent any substantial money on this, I'd like to see it prioritized with our library modernization that we're planning for the rink or upgrade to our boat launches, our other parks and recs proposals, I would want to see it as part of that rec master plan, where it fit in before we put any substantial investment into it or anything else. Just so it's relative and not just a single cherry pick. So, thank you.
Okay, is it as simple as asking that question? Has it been included in any surveys? Do we know that?
And maybe Jordan can add to this. So no, when we
No.
looked at our Parks and Rec master plan and even our operational review, I think they both say you have a lot on your plate already, that you should figure out how to maintain it and how you're going to do capital reinvestment on it in the years to come, let alone adding another piece of property. Just from a grass cutting and maintenance standpoint, I know we object to when we get a second vehicle to split the township in half. This is further away than the other amenities. So just from a staff perspective to go down there. And I think it's a valid question on why we have this property and do we need this property? So although we did some understanding of all the property we own and whether it's programmable or usable, at some point in time in the future, probably the next term of council, we'll have to look at that and determine are parcels of this nature necessary for municipal services, and if not, look at options.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor McLaughlin.
I'm in favor. I would like to see some kind of report or something that could give me the whole depth, because I wasn't realizing that the private road that we'd have to upgrade it and those things. I don't like to sell it, but I also don't want to be responsible for the liabilities down there either as well, because I know in the past that there has been somebody that drowned right at that area. That's way back in the late 60s. So I know the property, and I think we need a study so we can see what we're. And I'm saying an in-house study, because I don't want to get into consultants and stuff like that. That's too much cost. I see Councillor Jackson shaking her head going, just sell it. That's because we need to do something with it.
So would the second part of this motion cover your questions?
Certainly.
Okay, so we anticipate then Jordan would get back to us at some point. Do we want to set a time frame on that CAO?
It says,
I think it depends
it says it for discussion in 2023.
Yeah, so if that motion passes, it's 2023. If not, if it doesn't pass, then we're not going to do that work.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor McLaughlin, were you finished?
I just don't see what I'd like to get is some kind of report before 2023 to see where are we heading with this,
Okay.
Are we thinking about developing it? Are we not? So I would be in favor. I just want to find out the whole basics and what kind of a cost it would be to develop it, and if council was in favor of developing it, and if not, maybe we should entertain the putting it up for sale.
Okay, so if this passes, then it'll be 2022 for it got back up for discussion, and that would be budget discussion at that time?
It would be so if the motion passes, it'd be 2023. What Ivan, I think, has laid out here is that we have access, but it's on private roads. Any development of amenities would cause us to have to deal with the road situation. So Little Lakes cost $75,000 5 years ago, so think $100,000. And then improving 2 sets of private roads would likely cost in the magnitude of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what we're politely saying tonight, maybe we just need to say that in reports then, instead of reading between the lines, is we're not looking at it right now. And if you want to look at it, we would look at it again in 2023. But I think what Ivan is saying, there's easements there. You open this up, then you're going to have to deal with the roads. Not just that they're private, but also that they might be narrow, steep, there's two ways in for a reason. One's steep and one's not. So, so the question is, if you want further information from a staff time and perspective, we don't have the time. So why we're saying 2023 is because we don't have the time. So if that passes, we're recommending that if you want us to take a deeper look, it wouldn't be until 2023. But this report, I think, outlines, yes, that we have legal access, but once you go do more down there, there's a bunch of other considerations that come into play. And I think Ivan's noted those.
But in the interim, we still need signage.
Yeah, we know that use has been occurring. We know it's been occurring for a long time. So signage that's clearly providing some ground rules would be appropriate. We could probably recycle the one we pulled from Little Lakes that said, don't use this, and there are all these amenities there. But yeah, there's standard signage that our insurance and our risk assessors could help us with to put down there.
Okay, so that we're looking at this year then?
Yes, the sooner the better, because it's extensively used in winter for fish huts access as much as it is in summer.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Umstead.
Yeah, just a couple of comments. One, I'm in favor of signage. Two, I am not in favor of selling. Three, I am in favor of more information. In my opinion, we're dealing with another very prominent area where access to the lake or water is a huge issue. And I think we're going down that path again. If we just say, forget it, we're not allowing access to a lake. I know it's not hot now, or we may not get the information now, but I think we should at some point stay on it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, back to this side. Anyone else? Councillor Jackson?
I think to have staff take the time and look into this, whether it be in 2023 or further on, I don't know that it's necessary. There are so many miles of beach and not maybe beach, but water access to the Ottawa River. Do they really need access to this, what most people think is a private lake? It is a private road coming in. I'm not prepared to allow access to the public or, put signs up that state that this is, you go here to Garden Lake. I'm prepared to allow signage at the actual property, but not to advertise that this lake is open for business in any way, shape, or form. It's been an ongoing issue, and I agree we can spend our tax dollars in a way more efficient way than upgrading any road, any private road, and that's a private road. Typically, when it's a private road, we get the developer to upgrade the private road, and the township doesn't upgrade a private road. So I have to say it one more time. It is a private road, and the township has a hard enough time maintaining their own roads, let alone private roads. So not to go any further on that, I think it would be a very bad decision for council to upgrade any private road at any point in time, whether there's access or not. I think the people that typically are aware that there is access down there to that beach have been using it for years. Most use it respectfully. The odd one finds out that it's there, and they're the ones that are being disrespectful to the property and to the homeowners and cottage owners nearby. So by adding to that mess is not what I'm in favor of at all. And I can tell you, we have gotten numerous complaints of that property over the years, the 26 years that I've been around this municipality, and it's ongoing. And to add to that frustration down there is not, especially off of a private road. It'd be different if we had public access. Public access meaning public roads going to that township-owned area, but we don't. And I'm not in favor of spending any money to update, upgrade, have our staff look at it, because even if they looked at it, it's time and money that we're spending that they could be doing other things. And we're not going to, and I wouldn't recommend any council maintaining or upgrading a private road, period. There's other things that recreation and our funds can go at, and that's my opinion anyways.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay.
Oh, okay, I know it's a private road and got that very clearly. Okay, after saying all this, the beach itself is very nice. I've swam there lots of times, and I bought that property over a ways in 1985, and there was always trouble even then. Picnic tables, fires, but to close it would be wrong, because kids go down there with their bikes, and that's fine. So I'm all for putting signage up, but the actual swimming hole is very nice.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else? Councillor McLaughlin.
And I'll direct this to Rob more than anything. I'm now concerned about our liability if something happens down there. Are we liable? If we put up signage that it's not to be used, does that take the liability issue, or is there still a liability issue? Because that to me now has turned to be one of my biggest concerns.
I think it's important to show due diligence, and just like liability waivers and signs aren't the panacea, aren't the magic silver bullet that will save us. If we know that it's being used and being used improperly specifically, signage will help. But I would say you have liability at every corner as a municipality. So taking some due diligence and because we know the use has been there and that in some occasions it has been not great, that providing signage to that effect will help. And to that effect, I've asked insurance and the risk managers to actually provide some samples of language that would help. It doesn't mean that if something happens, somebody won't put a claim against us, but I would say any unopened road allowance people could try. I think signage is probably a good option, knowing what we know.
Okay, that's pretty much covered my big concern, because I wasn't thinking about it, but then it all of a sudden that becomes a big concern at this time. So, thanks,
Okay.
Rob.
Thank you. Reimbursement.
Thank you, and I'm in agreement here with Councillor Jackson. I think we're just throwing money at whatever. And I think it's unfortunate we have to wait till 2023 to even deal with this. I would love to see us try and deal with it in this term of council. It's been going on for 26 years. I'd like to see somehow come into some resolution here, and before we throw any more money anywhere, come up with a decision prior to 2023. I agree with the signage. I think it, but I'm in agreement with Councillor Jackson. And in respect to Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Olmsted, I would be in favor of selling this. If it's private, it's private. And I don't think we need to go any further than that. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jackson again, and then we'll cut it off at that.
Sorry, I'm not in favor of any introductions of amenities or not, in case that wasn't clear. I'm not in favor of staff taking any further time. I am in favor of the signage, and that's it. At some point when we review our properties and which properties are available for sale, then that's another issue. But to have this brought forward earlier or later or whatever, I'm voting against the second part of the motion. So just to be clear.
Okay, with that, we will start our vote. And we are going to vote on the first part of the motion. Yeah, the clerk will read it, please.
Okay. So the recommendation is that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region direct staff to implement signage at the Garden Lake water access. And do you want me to tell you the mover and seconder?
Yeah, tell us who the mover and the seconder are, just for credit.
Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Olmsted, seconder.
Okay. So now do we have to ask if they? Okay, we're voting on that only. So all in favor of that part of the motion, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the second part of the motion. Clerk will read it.
And the second part is that the Council of Township Township of Whitewater Region conduct a comprehensive examination for the potential introduction of amenities for discussion in 2023. And same mover and seconder.
I'd like a recorded vote.
Okay, you're asking for a recorded vote. Okay, so the clerk will do the recorded vote, please.
Against.
Sorry, I have to. Ooh. I'll start with the Councillor Nicholson.
Against.
I think it's yeah, okay. Councillor Olmsted, sorry.
4, please.
Okay, and Councillor Mackay?
I think I'm against.
Councillor McLaughlin?
I'm for.
Reeve Regier?
Against.
And Mayor Moore?
For.
So I have 4 against, 3 for. It's not carried.
Motion is not carried. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to item 6.4, Municipal Modernization Program. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the submission of 3 Municipal Modernization Program grant submissions for the 3rd implementation intake. 1, Cloud Building Permit Module Implementation, bracket joint submissions. And 2, Municipal Finance Internship, bracket joint submissions. And 3, Technology Solutions and Improvements. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Olmsted. And this goes to Rob, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to say that Ivan and Doug have done a lot of work on the first item, and Carmen and Sean in terms of the technological solutions. So the government has been putting money available for modernization. We've been quite successful in getting the money. And doing so with other municipalities, which I think is helpful. So in intake 1, we got the LEG funding and the Parks and Recreation review, operational review. And phase 2, we just got funds to do the roads joint review, some development work with Greater Madawaska, as well as the building services review internally. This intake, the priorities are digital modernization, service integration, streamlined development approvals, and shared services, alternative service delivery models. And we feel that the 3 projects we're proposing all fit within that. Actually, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is doing a webinar on projects to apply for, and all 3 of these are covered in some way or fashion. So the building permit module is something that there are a number of municipalities that are interested in speaking with the CAOs or the planners. So we've heard from Laurentian Valley, Greater Madawaska, and McNabb Braeside, and there's others that have expressed interest. So the deadline is October 16th. We would confirm that. So by going together, we've confirmed competitive pricing, and this would deal with implementation and year 1. The second one is the municipal internship program. So when I was president of AMCTO, this was a program that had brought people into the sector, and these people are all retiring now. So it was a program that Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing funded for years and stopped funding. And AMCTO has advocated to bring it back because there are a number of people that are going to be retiring. And Minister Clark has encouraged municipalities to apply for the internship as joint service delivery, and to see and that they'd be willing to fund it that way. So when we looked at it, we've got some interest from Horton, Greater Madawaska, McNabb Braeside. I'm missing one. Greater Madawaska, McNabb Braeside, and Horton. So there's 4 of us, and we'd be looking for what the internship program is for, kind of very qualified graduates at the university level or at the master's level and trying to get them into municipalities at kind of very decision-making levels and to bring them into the fore. So we're looking to share a finance intern, and the focus would be on the TCA, the finance components of the asset management plans, budget forecasting, things that we never get to, and our budgeted amount would be the equivalent of a summer student. It's just we would have somebody throughout the year and we would share the resource. The last one is just us, and it would be just some technological solutions and improvements. So Sean's looking at iCity Online, so that was the e-billing for taxes and water. And Carmen's done a lot of work on records management, and we, as you know, we've scanned all of the building files this year. We're nearly done. So we're at a point where FileHold, which is a records management software, we're looking at it, and this would pay for the implementation in year 1. The financial section would speak to specifically to those 3 softwares, what the annual carrying cost would be should we get the funding. So year 1 cost would be part of the grant, but just to give you a sense of what these would cost to maintain. So it's great to go and get money to implement it, but there are costs on an ongoing basis, and you should be aware of these. I should also point out that the FileHold software, Carmen was mentioning that there are 4 other municipalities that are implementing it this year. So we're joining in. So another good work amongst townships. And the building module has been implemented in Arnprior, and there are, I believe, a number of other municipalities that are using their modernization funding from years ago that they haven't quite used to do it, but the rest of us are going in together. I should point out on joint applications, what we found out is if we go in with somebody who has less than 5,000 population, they access 75% instead of 65% funding. So on the zoning one, for instance, Greater Madawaska applied, so we access 75% funding instead of 65% funding. So we hope that Horton and Greater Madawaska might put in the joint. So then the numbers here would be reduced even less. But in previous intakes, if they had a smaller percentage, we could access 75% dollars, not 65% dollars. So that's what we're proposing. I know it's more work, but it's stuff that we've been working towards. And if we're able to access 65% funding and do it in partnership with other municipalities, we think it's the right thing to do. So if there are any questions, I'd take them, or the staff members that have been involved in those projects.
Any questions? Councillor Jackson, please.
I like it all. Just wondering if you're thinking about the citizen engagement module for iCity as well.
So I'm assuming that's similar to Access E11. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, this will allow ratepayers to access their own account at any point in time.
Yes. Well, the way that I understand the iCity Online is that taxpayers will be able to access their property tax, print their property tax bills, see their payments. I wasn't aware that it was called citizen engagement, but I think we're speaking the same language there.
Awesome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Umstead?
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic initiative. I think we should be pursuing as much of this type of funding and modernization as we can get our hands on. Thank you.
It's not going to be there forever, so if we don't take advantage, it'll be gone. Councillor Nicholson?
Yeah, just a question. Will it include water? Like, will you be able to get information on water and sewer?
The same kind of question as Councillor Jackson. Yeah, so it would be there'd be a module for utility billing, water and sewer, module for property tax, and then like lawyers can go on and request tax certificates. Vendors eventually could see if their payment's been processed, and on and on and on.
Perfect. So then 2 follow-on questions. Can that be funded out of water and sewer partly? And can development charges help cover some of these expenses?
The development charge piece, I would defer to Ivan in a second. Maybe he would know or not know. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, I guess a portion of it we could break out a portion of water and sewer to fund that. $5,200 split out that way may not be worth the administrative piece, but that could be looked at if we were successful. Ivan, would you like to speak to that? I don't know, or Rob, maybe?
I would say on the development charges, it wasn't included in the development charges study, and I'm not sure if it's a permissible expense, so I would say no. Yeah.
Sorry, the reason I'm going down this little gopher hole is that the annual reoccurring costs on it represent what, 0.5% of a levy? So 24,000, isn't there 1% is 47? Anyway, maybe
You're speaking for all of them together?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, how do we continue to fund this every year after year? And I was just trying to see if there was other ways to achieve that.
But
otherwise, we're taking 0.5%. We're either increasing it or we're taking it from somewhere else. That doesn't take away from the fact that I completely support it. I just want to make sure I can find a way to fund it.
I would just say that I would hope if the tower provides internet service to the majority of our ratepayers, that they would go and either print or save their bills. We may save in postage and paper and envelopes for the iCity portion.
And just to add, the cloud permitting, which is building, so the building services review will look at how we provide services, how we get building permits out, but also what the expenses are and what the revenues are. And by law, there's supposed to be a correlation there. There isn't always, but I know our consultant, Tammy Carruthers, will look at all the costs to provide the building service function, including any software, the vehicle, all those things are supposed to be considered when setting rates. So to your point, the cloud permitting part is considered as part of the building fees, acknowledging that other than last year, we generally don't bring in enough fees to pay for the building function. Taxes do, but technically or theoretically, building services are supposed to pay for themselves through fees.
That's perfect. Thank you. And I just, again, support this. We got to get it into the next century here, and this is where we got to go. So we've just got to find a way to make it work. So thank you, staff.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 6.5, Vaccination Requirements. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive this report for information purposes as it relates to provincial requirements for proof of vaccination, as well as the imposition of proof of vaccination by other employers. Motion to seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Jackson. This goes to Rob? Or?
Yes, I'll start, and Jordan's here, and Jordan's had to navigate this, and it hasn't always been easy explaining to people that, yes, we must implement what the government has done, which is in regulation, and if we don't, we can be charged and fined. So Jordan can speak to the operational aspects. This report is for information, so that council has a basis, gets the same information, and if necessary, can provide further direction to council. So from a recreation perspective, I think there's been some confusion, but I think what's important to note is that there's an exemption for those under the age of 18 years of age, and that exemption applies to coaches and officials such as referees. Other municipalities have decided, whether they did so by council or at the staff level, to not extend that exemption to coaches and officials. We did not do that. Jordan has met with other rec managers, and when we talked about it, I said, well, that would be a change in service and service level and would require council's direction. But also, we've had to, on the first weekend, we had some disorderly conduct from members of the public in 3 instances, and had to bring in the police. And that's just trying to implement what the province has set out. And I should note that we were forced to just operationally and to keep our staff safe, including our attendants, our students, bring in some temporary security for a period of 2 weeks to just see how things settle themselves. So other municipalities have decided that the exemption for under 18 does not apply to coaches and officials. We have not taken that position, and if council wants to go in that way, you would need to direct us that way. It would also, there's other bullets here that I want to note. The Beechburg Canteen, which is has a lease with us, so technically they're doing takeout, so they're exempt. People can order from her and get their food and leave, and a vaccination requirement is not required. Indoor areas of meeting and event space. For council, this is your job. Staff, it's our job. So vaccination requirements don't apply to us meeting here, but the use of any meeting hall and space requires proof of vaccination. So that includes the lower hall, the Westmeath Recreation Hall, as well as the arena upstairs hall. So what that means, because there's no staff here in the evenings, bookings in the evening here are not occurring. And I know some of the groups that had started meeting have paused because of the vaccination requirements to see what happens. Carmen can conduct weddings in the council chambers and get them out. They can't have a reception, but she can marry them and move them on. Libraries, I know there's been questions about libraries, and we have a separate library board, but there's nothing in the provincial requirements that speaks to libraries. And there's a general exemption for children under 12. With regard to mandates involving staff, the requirements that have been put in place by the government do not apply to the employer-employee relationship. So technically at the arenas, while we must check proof of vaccination, that does not mean that staff that are doing that or staff that are working in those arenas or any of our staff are required to provide proof of vaccination. Few things I should say is, under the Occupational Health and Safety Act, I just want to remind you of kind of responsibilities we have as the employer. So you're the employer and I'm your representative, so it also applies to me. So under the Act, the township as the employer is obligated to provide a workplace free from serious recognized hazards. So whether or not we're able to mitigate that, so I'm not saying that that's means we do a vaccination, proof of vaccination for employees, but be reminded of your legislative responsibilities as an employer. The other thing I want to point out is the Ontario Human Rights Commission guidance on the duty to accommodate. Two things. They've basically said that vaccination requirements are generally permissible and accommodation is required for proven cases under the Human Rights Code. They clarify to say, with regard to creed, which is beliefs, that a single belief that if you have a single belief that you don't believe in vaccination, that does not fit under the definition of creed. So I think that's guidance that came out last week from the Human Rights Commission. I think that's helpful. What would accommodation mean? What it would mean, the way I would interpret it is, you might not be in the workplace if you refuse to be vaccinated, and we would permit you to go on unpaid leave and protect your position for a period of time. Other employers have taken the stance to require testing. My understanding is testing is very expensive, available at shoppers and self-administered, and might not be readily available necessarily. And other employers have also decided to terminate. So what I'm saying here is, before I spend any time researching a vaccination policy, council would have to provide some guidance here on whether you want to proceed or not. That being said, all of the health and safety requirements that relate to COVID remain in place. Physical distancing, masking in communal spaces where distancing cannot be achieved, pre-screening, staying home when sick, doing the self-assessment, getting tested when required, self-isolating when required. So just because we currently don't have a vaccination policy does not mean that people can do whatever they want. We still have measures in place to protect staff and the public. So this was just to put all the information currently available before you, and then should you wish to go beyond the requirements imposed by the province for patrons and recreation settings, or ask me to take a look at what a vaccination policy would look like, you'd have to direct me to do that. You wouldn't be voting on that till it came back. And I should note that the CAOs have talked about this, and we understand that the county is bringing forward a report in October that they've dealt with most of their employees that fall under requirements, for instance, paramedics and homes for the aged, but they're going to be bringing forward a report on the rest of their staff, and most of the municipalities are waiting. So the question is, like, how long do you wait before making a decision? So hopefully this information is foundational and gives you a good sense before, and if you want us to make any additional steps that we would need direction accordingly.
Thank you. Are we going to hear from Jordan at this time?
Yeah, Jordan, did you want to just speak to what you've been dealing with?
Yeah, sure. Kind of where to start, I guess. So as Rob had mentioned, we did have a couple incidences whenever this first began. And I think it's not fair to staff. We're not security. We're not bylaw enforcers. They're there to do a job, and having to deal with difficult people that refuse to leave a facility is quite hard. And to have that over a period of 4 days, I think that security was the next measure that we brought in. We're hoping at the end of the 2 weeks that kind of everybody that is using the facility understands the regulations, understands what's going on. I think it comes down to an educational part at this point in time, and we're following the provincial regulations basically to a T. So really, Rob covered most of it. I don't really have anything else to add at this point in time.
Okay, thank you. Now we go to questions, and we'll start at the end, and we'll go around the table. Councillor Mackay.
I was asked by firefighter, where would they stand? They're only part-time. Do they have to be vaccinated?
So your obligations as an employer relate to anybody on the payroll, and I would extend that to volunteers. Because they train in proximity to each other and in response, if you're looking at any vaccination requirements for staff, it would include all staff, including casual, part-time. And in the sense of fire, they get paid for training and they get paid for every call, so they're remunerated, so it would apply to them.
Well, when is
if we did it. Right now, there's no requirements.
Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson.
I would ask that a report be brought back and recommendations be brought back once the county has completed their report and implemented whatever vaccination policy or not for the rest of their staff.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
I had tabled this query offline, I think, to the mayor, the Reeve, and the CAO, but I had some families approach me prior to HEO's policy update asking why volunteers could be in proximity to their children under the age of 12. And they were looking for a higher level of support, similar to what Pembroke and other regions had done to implement to say volunteers are not exempted. And I gave that some thought and thought the same thing, what about when we do an after-school care program in one of our facilities, or we're having people volunteer with our vulnerable seniors? So as part of that report, I'd like to have more information as to whether we could include volunteers in our facilities. And I know it's already covered from an HEO perspective, but HEO doesn't govern ringette or other sports that might occur on the ice. So I'm looking, you want to throw in there, Rob? Is that?
Sure. I guess maybe it's not so black and white, but the recreation waiver is pretty specific to what it is and what it isn't. But when we would look at this, if both councillors want to maybe move in second and combine their things, what we could do is come back once the county on the staff side, but then provide additional direction in terms of what all the other municipalities are doing. Because some staff just did it, and I said, well, no, staff can't just restrict on their own who's going into facilities. So we could look at how the exemption applies and whether providing further restrictions and how we would do that. And I guess we would do that through a separate policy. But if both councillors are okay to report back when the county has looked at the staffing side, but then also on the recreation exemption, and should it be pursued?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think there will be a number of municipalities that, if, we're researching, like Councillor Nicholson said, if the city of Pembroke has put something into play or any other municipality, then we should have that information as well. It'd be nice to be consistent across the board, because why are their volunteers or coaches, if the city of Pembroke says coaches have to be vaccinated to attend city of Pembroke events, but if they come to the Cobden rink or the Beechburg rink in Whitewater Township, They don't have to be. So it needs to be consistent throughout the county.
And I wonder too, in keeping with that, how somebody, just for example, the city of Pembroke, who says they shall be vaccinated, but when they come into our arena, they don't have to be. So what about swapping back and forth? Does that mean there's going to be no involvement of minor hockey going back and forth? So makes a decision. So getting back to your motion then, Councillor Nicholson, will you be the seconder on that?
I guess it was just direction.
It's just direction?
Yeah.
It wasn't a motion? Okay.
Yeah, and we could note it as direction, but I just wanted to be clear that you want us to make more work, not make more work, I mean, take the time, that's not what I meant. I meant to take the time to do additional research and come back with potential measures.
Okay.
And so we'll just, if we can take that as written direction without a motion then, and reflect it.
Okay, thank you. So we'll continue around the table then. Recreational.
Thank you. So if we do this, just so everyone's aware, it will come back to county in October to committee, and then it will have to come back to county council at the end of October. So now we'll be looking into November before we would be able to probably action or do anything. So I'm just wondering if we want to do anything prior to that, at least get the ball rolling. We don't have to proceed, but at least we'd have something that staff is already taking a look at it, as opposed to waiting for another 6 weeks or whatever, how long it will take.
You mean something like a bylaw, have it ready, but not necessarily sworn in?
When is admin meeting? Finance and admin. I think finance and admin, the agenda will be issued shortly. Recreational?
It will be the second week of October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll be able to potentially report back at the next meeting. Should that information not be available, it will be the November 3rd meeting.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, I think that's a good, you're recognizing the timeline. I agree, Reeve. I'm not so much, I want to take advantage of the research, not necessarily of county's decision. So I don't think we wait till November. I think we grab their research as soon as it's done, and we can make our own decision. It's just, we already know the staff are stretched. I'd say steal what they have and use that to help inform us.
I agree with you, Councillor Nicholson. Yep.
Okay, so in keeping with that then, are we going to act at just a regular council, or are we going to call a special council for that?
We should be closed for the 20th, so I'll keep an eye on it and I'll inform council on, and if we're waiting on the staff piece that can come later, but the rec piece can come earlier, but we're going to target the 20th if we have enough information to do so.
Okay, but once we get a second and a third arena going here, it's going to be hard for the staff. That's all. That's my findings. Councillor Olmsted, please.
Yeah, and I'm going to speak specifically to township employees here, understanding that arenas and visitors and that kind of stuff, but that's a whole, to me, it's a whole different, we've got so many pieces, so many moving pieces here that I want to focus on township employees. I personally think that if each one of us aren't ready to be held personally responsible for somebody's health and forcing them, so if we're talking about forcing somebody into a decision that they don't want to make, I think if we're not ready to be held personally responsible, we better take a hard look at our decision, meaning mandating a decision. We've built workplaces that are tolerant. We have pay equity and inclusive and sensitive and all that kind of stuff, sensitive to mental health especially. This is causing a lot of mental health issues. These decisions by employees are causing a lot of issues. Obviously, some people are choosing to be vaxxed, some are choosing not to be vaxxed for whatever reason. God love them, that's their decision. I've been personally approached by a number of township employees that are at the end of the rope trying to make a decision. So I want council to understand that don't take this decision lightly. If we move forward, don't move forward. However we move forward, I want us to really think about what we're saying here. I think our job as council should be, rather than threatening or bullying or however you want to call it into somebody to make a decision, should be really focused on data. I'm a numbers guy. I really believe in show them the facts present the facts, let the employee and their healthcare provider make a decision on how this should go forward. And I say that with a very personal story that I'm going to give you. Hopefully I can keep it together when I give you the story. So, if I take a water, please. My son was bit by a tick October 2019, October. 6 months, 6 doctors, no action, nothing wrong with him. They're all saying nothing wrong with him. Yet he couldn't get out of bed, couldn't eat or drink, couldn't drive, had to quit his job, quit hockey. So out of about a 10, I'd say he was operating at about a level of a 2 or a 3 for a young kid for his life. Previously, he was a perfectly healthy 19-year-old, spent all of his time outdoors. The 7th doctor determined he had a classic case of Lyme disease. And if anybody has dealt with Lyme disease, you know that it could be a sentence for death or a really bad situation of whatever. A long lifeline of wheelchairs and anyway. Thankfully, after 2 years, 22 pills a day for 2 years, 22 pills a day, he's much better today and almost symptom-free. He has some symptoms remaining, but I'd say he's a 9 out of 10. One of the pills he was on is called doxycycline, amongst a host of other 22 pills a day. He was on a lot of meds. Well, doxycycline is an antibiotic used to treat infections, chest, skin, dental, many rare infections, also used to prevent and treat malaria and COVID. It was a side benefit. He had this in October. COVID didn't even exist. He's been told not to take the vax by the 7th doctor. Do not take the vax. He's come so far. They don't want to risk any going backwards because there are no studies done on the correlation of the vax, the various vaxes, with any of the meds that he's taken. Not one of them. There's been a study done on the effects of, so as you know, sometimes two positive or two negatives make a positive or whatever, right? So we do not know once he gets a shot how it's going to react to the doxycycline that's been in his system for 2 years. So he's been told, hang on, they want to get more evidence of the story. And the reason I tell you that story is because we don't know what's going on. We don't know what meds our employees are on. We don't know what family situation or health matters or what. We don't have no understanding at all of what each individual is going through. So I strongly believe that painting a whole staff with one brush is not a resolution. I think we should present the facts to them, give them as much information as we can, let them work with their healthcare provider. If it's for them, great. If they get vaxxed, great. If they don't, they need to make that decision on their own and their own ability. So at this time, I really am against a broad-based policy. I think we should, I say at this time because I am a data guy, I want more information. Feed me as much information as you can give me. But I want to see more data. At this time, I do not want to see a broad-based policy implemented to our staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. I've got a lot of different thoughts because my daughter's in the healthcare profession, and she had to show her her proof of vaccination. She just got rehired, and that was one of the stipulations. I'm not positive what their protocol is, whether that if for medical reasons, then you're exempt. I'm not positive of that. I don't know. And I think that's something that I would like to see as much. I'm like Councillor Olmsted. I want to get as much information as we possibly can of what other people are doing and how to implement this. I don't want to go just straight ahead. I want to have all the facts that I possibly can, and I'd like to see our CAO come back with a report on some of these things, because I know that the healthcare, and I think it's all over Ontario, are implementing it, but I don't know what their protocol is. And those are things that we need to know. We just can't go just straightforward. And I am totally in favor. I kind of look at the public, and I think it's part of us to have, make sure that the public are as safe as they can be, and that our staff is as safe as possible. But myself, I need the information, and I'd like to see a report come back so that we could make a proper decision as soon as possible. And that's where I'll stop.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jackson?
I 100% agree. And I'm not saying that, by me bringing this forward, meaning that, I want everybody vaccinated or they're gone or whatever. I want a fulsome report back that will include, okay, have the municipalities given exemptions for those that have a medical exemption? I believe they have. I believe there is avenues for that, as well as for testing for those that refuse to get tested or to get vaccinated, and at their cost. I believe a lot of employers are putting that into play, that it would be the employee's cost if there is no medical reason why they can't get vaccinated. So all of those things, I'm not saying one or the other, that I'm in favor of one or the other. I'm just saying that we need to understand what we're going to put in place, like Councillor Olmsted has said, and that we need to be cognizant of the safety of our employees, both their mental health, and because it has divided a lot of people from vaccinated and unvaccinated, but the question is out there for both the ones that are vaccinated. Well, why isn't everybody getting vaccinated? The ones that are unvaccinated believe that they have that choice, and that I'm not siding with either one at this table. I'm saying that there are others that have put policies in place, and we need to understand those policies, what the options are for our employees. We need to be cognizant of the fact that we have to keep all our employees safe. We have to keep the public safe. We have to keep the volunteers, the coaches, and all of that who use our facilities safe as well. So however that has to be implemented, as long as it's done safely and we're aware of how that's being done is all I'm asking for that, all these options to come forward. But definitely one of those is definitely a medical exemption if we ever went to a full vaccination policy. So we need to understand all of those implications.
Okay, thank you. So does the CAO have clear direction on what we anticipate you will do?
Yeah, and I think the whole point of this, and it's difficult, to be honest, it's difficult for everybody. This report was just to put on the table what we know. So there's two examples there of policies that are existing if council wants to look at them. But basically we wanted to confirm before we did any work in terms of changing the recreation requirements or looking at the staff level that council wanted us to do that additional research. And we'll do that and bring that forward based on the comments and those concerns that have been raised. I think the OHRC policy statement is helpful, and that's why we brought that one. But we'll look at other examples and any policy that we would implement as the employer. We would also confirm that from an HR perspective and an HR law perspective to ensure that we're on solid grounds. So we'll do that extra work. We just wanted to confirm with council before we did it, and ultimately council will get to decide.
Okay, can we also at that time make sure every possible volunteer, et cetera, is listed from the park volunteers in the summertime to part-time crossing guards if needed, et cetera? Let's make sure we don't have to reinvent the wheel for one group.
anyone on the payroll. So we'll look at all the categories of people involved with the township.
Okay, then does that also include then our canteen operators, et cetera? Would they have to be listed?
So we would look at, and the treasurer mentioned it to me, contractors that are working on our behalf, cleaners, the auditors coming into the building, all those elements. So we would look at that comprehensively.
Great. Nice to make sure everybody's covered. Okay, Councillor Mackay, and then we're going to go for a vote.
I just want to say that there's people out there, I have a lot of nephews, and it wasn't they were against getting a vaccine, they just never got around to it. And now their job has forced them to. They're not anti-vaxxers, they're just maybe lazy young men. And now they have to get it, they're getting it. It's no big deal, but there's a lot of people out there who just never got around to it. It sounds funny, but it's true. You'd be surprised. Oh yeah, I'll get that later.
In that age group too, they don't watch the news and keep up on the releases and stuff the same way we do. They're too busy on other stuff on their phones, not what we look at. Okay, thank you. So at this time, well, Councillor Homestead.
Sorry, I just want to understand the HEO part versus, and I guess this will go to Jordan, because I do understand that the province came out and said the coaches and whatever didn't have to be, and kids under a certain age didn't have to be, and then HEO came out and said, yes, everybody has to be except for the players. So does HEO, does that trump the municipal policy? I don't understand how the relation there.
I don't understand it either, so can the CAO answer that one? Or Jordan?
Jordan can start and I can add if necessary.
So it doesn't, there's two things going on. So it's a separate organization. So HEO governs so any hockey that basically goes on in our arena, so any kind of hockey that's under the age of 18, HEO is part of that. So all our juniors, all our minor hockey, whatnot, it doesn't govern things like ringette. So there's two separate things. We're responsible for following the guidelines from the province, and HEO is simply an organization making their own rules. So it'd be no different if all of a sudden, if the head of ringette, as an example, made those calls as well. They can implement that for their own organization, and they got to follow that. The question is right now is who's managing that or who's looking after that, right? So what's going to happen is they've given a time period till November 8th. And after that time period, there's going to be people coming through the facility. As of right now, we're following the provincial guidelines. So they'd still be able to continue on doing what they were doing. But if HEO is bringing this forward, we want to know, who's going to be managing that. So is it at a registration level? Are they going to be making sure that all their coaches and everything are vaccinated? So I think it's going to be a large process for them. But really, there's two things going on. So they're a separate organization, and we're simply following what the province is providing.
The only thing I would add is any group, like if you're joining something, you don't have to join it. And what I think they're saying is, if you want to be part of this, these are the rules. But they're going stricter. They're at 12 and under. Anything above 12 is mandated. So they've gone even beyond. They went beyond the requirements. So it's tricky. So I got an email saying you can't even enforce the provincial regulations, the Nuremberg something or other, and the feds didn't do it, so you can't do it. So there's all kinds of thoughts on it. So just that a bit of patchwork, what that does is put a little bit of a burden on staff, and we're not there to argue. But I think they're trying to take some leadership, and what will happen is they might kick people out, but then they might try to book the ice. So having a real detailed look on all how this impacts is necessary. And like I said, the Human Rights Commission released their guidance last week, and the province, even though they announced on the 1st, I think they gave us the regulation on the 20th. Like, we've been running around trying to understand what it means, and it's still fluid. But they're going really strict. Anybody above 12 is required, and you could be on an executive, never step 1 foot in an arena, and you'd be required. Anybody that's part of an association, you could be a team manager, and you'd be required. So they've gone very strict.
Okay, that help? All right. Okay, so we're going to vote on the motion.
Which was really to receive.
Motion to receive. So, okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we move on to 6.6, alternative voting and vote counting equipment. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the use of internet and telephone voting and optical scanning vote tabulators for the 2022 municipal election. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. And this goes to Carmen.
So on a lighter note, we'll jump right to the elections. A little bit of background. The requirements of the Municipal Act states that if council is interested in alternative voting methods and counting equipment, that we have to authorize a bylaw. We have an election working group that's created with, or we're in partnership with the City of Pembroke, the towns of Petawawa, Renfrew, and Arnprior, as well as the townships of Greater Madawaska, Laurentian Valley, and McNabb Braeside. We're looking to secure competitive pricing for an RFP process to select a vendor to provide the alternative voting and vote counting equipment. Moving forward, using the internet and telephone voting would address concerns of mobility limitations, and if people work out of town or on personal matters on voting days, or if they have health concerns, or if they own property in the township but live somewhere else, by using these options will give them more access to voting. We also hope that COVID-19 restrictions will be lifted by the time of the next regular election. Internet voting will create the fewest complexities with regards to maintaining COVID-19 protocols. So as you can see with the voter turnout, the popular choice of voters for the 2018 election was alternative voting. Traditional paper ballots will still be provided for home of the aged, advanced polling, and election day stations. They'll still be available. And if council's in agreement with this, we will come back to council with a bylaw, and we'll inform the election group to go forward with the RFP. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Councillor McLaughlin?
Well, I've been through quite a few elections. I'm not sure just how many, I can't count. But the last two have been farces, both of them. The last one we had to extend an extra day. The one before, well, the public found out before we found out. And it was after midnight before we could possibly get the results. My first election, and I've told this to many people many times, was my most exciting election. And it was strictly go and vote. I think I only did one that was just polls. The rest of them, I remember doing the mail-in, and it was very good. Not quite as exciting because you didn't get the polls coming in. But it was over about 8:30, 9 o'clock. We had the results. It was all finalized. I can't remember the next one. Whether it was, I can't remember if it was an election, if it was the internet or not. But I certainly well remember the last two. And I'm certainly not in favor of having coming the night of the election all pumped up to get my results and go told, oh, we had a problem with the internet, we have to move it to another day. So I don't know why we want to use the internet. Federal government didn't. I like the tabulators. I think that was fantastic. But if the feds don't use it and the provincial government didn't use it, why are we using it? So I'm not in favor of using the internet service, and I'll stop because I could go on forever. But the last two elections, I will never forget.
Okay, thank you. Reeve Rigueur.
Well, I have to disagree with you there, Councillor McLaughlin. When you look at a statistic of 64% of the people voted it was on the internet. If we don't offer that, what about those residents that have cottages and whatnot. They have no way of voting unless they arrive for a paper ballot. I disagree. I'm in full favor of internet voting here, and I would not ever want to take a step backwards. I think we'd be doing that if we take away that option. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackay.
I agree totally with Regier. We got people participating that wouldn't participate, and it's good. The more people get voting, the better it is. Thank you.
Do you think our percentage of 48 or 49% is pretty good? I think it is. Yeah. Okay, who was next? Sorry. No? Councillor Nicholson?
I had a question on the process from the last election. The error that occurred, or the overwhelming of the system, does the contract allow for that not to occur in the future? Will it be financial penalties to the company? I just want to make sure that we've learned from that and able to apply it in the future.
I think they've learned from that. I don't feel that will happen again, but I mean, who knows? I do know, however, that our partnership with our working group is not convinced that that company is maybe one to follow up with. And I think you had another question, Lola, sorry.
Contractually, if there is a screw up, will they pay for it?
Okay. I'm not sure what's in the RFP, but we can definitely put that forward to say, but I do believe there's probably, after learning from the last election, I think there's something in there.
I would just add, I want to say that Carmen's clerk, this will be her first election as the returning officer. I promise to not be problematic, and she can ship me out to a polling location so she doesn't have to deal with me. But I want to say that what happened last time had nothing to do with staff's planning, time, and a lot of the staff members that are involved are still here. So I think that's really great in terms of being able to deliver the election. And yes, penalty clauses will be included. And the RFP process that Carmen and the team are doing will also allow the assessment of the vendors and who's able to do so in a way that doesn't, we have none of the frustrations of the past. So it wasn't any staff's doing, it was the provider, and the competitive process will deal with that, and the contract that will result will also have provisions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I only have one concern, and I wasn't happy last election with the phone system, so I'm wondering if Mobile has decided that they're going to upgrade their equipment before the next provincial or municipal election, because it only happens municipal elections because, as Councillor McLaughlin said, everything else is paper. So where do we stand with the phone system? Do we know?
So with this, what we could do is instead of having, instead of the recommendation saying internet and telephone, we can just say alternative voting. When we get the RFP back, which will hopefully have something in it, some more teeth into it, I can bring something back then to decide which alternative we want to use. But if we change, what I can do is just change the recommendation to say, instead of the use of internet and telephone, I can just say alternative voting, and then we can make a decision about it after.
Okay, thank you. Just that this next election, if there's more problems like there was the last two, I don't know what's going to happen with the average taxpayer out there. We may end up going back just to paper ballots the way the province and the feds are doing it.
Yeah.
There's too many problems. Councillor McLaughlin?
And I may direct this one either to Carmen or Rob, but do you know what the percentage of the voter turnout was for the federal election? Does anybody have an idea? I understand what Councillor Regier is saying, and I certainly agree. I like the percentage of the voter turnout, and to her response about, well, if we did mail-in, or you could ask for a mail-in ballot. I think that's what the federal government did. They asked for the mail-in ballots, which I agree.
That was because of COVID, though. That was just because of COVID. That was because of COVID they offered the mail-in ballot. They don't normally offer it, I don't think. Not the feds.
I think I have an answer. It looks like it was about at least 59%. and it was low. They said it was low this year, the news article.
Oh, so it was lower than the last election?
It says
So
historic.
according to that news report, okay.
Yeah.
67 last, 59 this time. Does that answer your question, Councillor McLaughlin?
Okay, well, I guess my point is, like, certainly, and I understand, I think I heard the same words the last election when we were talking about using the internet as I've heard tonight. Oh, that will never happen again. Well, I'm sorry, but...
Just to note too, last year we didn't have, I don't believe in, CIO, if you can correct me, we didn't have day of ballots, day of paper ballots. We just did internet day of, correct?
And then we extended on the extra day we extended.
Because
on the turnout, there's studies that have demonstrated that the increase by using telephone internet is at least 4 to 5%.
Yeah.
So without pulling Admiston Bromley's results, like there's a number of factors if you have a competitive race. So what I think we should do is just proceed. The RFP process will happen. You'll get to vote on that when it comes back. And then the bylaws will come back. This is just direction to proceed.
Okay, so can we vote on this and move on, or? Oh, sorry, Councillor Jackson.
Can I just need to make sure that the mover, who was Councillor Mackay, is okay with me changing the words internet and telephone to alternative. So if you're okay with making that change.
And Councillor Jackson was the seconder.
Yep, I'm okay with that. Just a comment. So the federal and provincial election, you can only vote where you live, and you can only vote once. Municipal elections, if you own properties in different municipalities, you can vote once in each of those municipalities. So that is the difference between federal and provincial when we look at municipal, and allowing alternate voting to people that don't necessarily live here. We do have a large, not a large number, but we used to have a number of people that lived over in Europe, as well as the states that have properties up here. They would be able to vote by internet or telephone. Otherwise, they were not going to make the trip here. As well as, you know, if you own property in another location in Ontario, somebody from Toronto can also vote in Whitewater region over the internet or telephone, where they wouldn't be able to do it in the day of unless they're coming up to advance polls. Provincial and federal, you vote once. Municipal, you can vote in each municipality that you own or lease property.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
No, that comes to me. I'm going back to when it was mail-in ballots. Would people that own property and lived in Europe, would they get a mail-in ballot? Does anybody know? So that would cover everybody. Is that correct? If it was a mail-in ballot?
But the cost associated with mail-in ballots, because you pay the postage at $1 there, and you have to pay the postage upon the return as well. So that's $2 for every voter.
That wasn't my question. My question was, do they get ballots?
They would,
okay,
and they have
that's
in the
all I
past.
asked. I just asked if they would get ballots. I understand costs. I have no problems with costs. I'm just going, and like you say, let's drop it. As Deb's uncle would say, enough said. We can discuss this when it comes to the time that we decide what we're going to vote. So with that comment, I'll stop.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, 5-minute break. Cobden Water Treatment Plant Upgrades and Greater Debenture. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region authorize a debenture for the Cobden Waste Treatment Plant upgrades and authorize a debenture for the 2021 John Deere 770 GP grader. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Rebrick here. Thank you. And this goes to Sean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the interest of time, this one should be fairly quick. So we're at the point with the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant that we've drawn down all of our approved debenture funding. So with that, it makes sense to roll this into a debenture. If we delayed rolling this into a debenture, we would still continue to pay interest monthly. So what this does is it finalizes that debenture, and we would begin paying that back April 15th with principal and interest. So our monthly interest on the temporary borrowing would cease. And then it just happened to be that while we were doing this one, or becoming up to date on this one, that we have the grader at the same time. A couple weeks ago we passed the first bylaw for the grader. So just on the Cobden Wastewater Treatment Plant, it's a 30-year debenture of payments occurring semi-annually. It'll run from April 15th, 2022 to October 15th, 2051. The John Deere is 5 years, and it will go from April 15th, 2022 to October 15th, 2026. And then with the wastewater treatment plant, the interest is 2.98%. In 2021, we had budgeted, we thought we were going to have one debenture payment, so we had budgeted for a debenture payment. So in essence, the increase on the 2022 budget would be the additional second debenture payment. So that represents a 20% increase to those expenses. That would be covered through the sewer rates, and then with the grader, it's a 1.3% increase. It's a 1.44% interest rate, and with all this rolling to be finalized, we would still have about $920,000 of annual repayment limit remaining on our debt annual repayment limit. So if there's anything I can answer, I'll pass it back to the chair for direction.
Any questions? Councillor Olmsted?
Just a real quick one. Just trying to understand municipal finance rates going forward. So do you guys, do we have any access to reports to show, like in the regular financial world, that, you know, they're anticipating inflation and pressures on interest rates are going to start rising and stuff? So do we receive anything like that, Sean?
I wouldn't say I received anything bulletin or anything. Infrastructure Ontario, so when the rates were, I believe they were lower like 6 months ago to a year ago, they froze interest rates, and I'm not quite certain what the Bank of Canada has done real recently, but I have noticed a slight increase even in the last 6 months of the quoted rates. I would anticipate as the Bank of Canada rises interest rates, Infrastructure Ontario, just like any other lending institution, will also have to increase their lending rate. So I don't know if I would get anything that would be different from the real or the other financial world. I won't call it real, but other financial world. That I wouldn't get anything different than what anyone else would get. I think it's just paying attention to the Bank of Canada and what they're going to do with their rates. I will say that Infrastructure Ontario typically quotes less than banks for our sector.
Yeah, way less. Yeah, so I guess my question is kind of leading to, is there, I don't think you can renegotiate anything that's locked in, but is there anything that we should be looking at coming up in the next, say, 6 months to a year that maybe we should try to lock in or get the details done as quickly as possible? Because everybody's anticipating the rates to rise in the next, like, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I would say that the approved, or well, the projects that we have that would be debt financed that have been approved in past budgets, the LED streetlights, tandem truck that should be here somewhat shortly, and Olmsted Jeffrey Lake Road, I would say that the sooner we can get those done, obviously the better, but we still need to make sure they're quality. But and we would be looking at the 2022 budget. Yeah, obviously we'll be looking at if there's projects that need to be debt financed there or equipment or whatnot. But yeah, ideally if we can get things quicker and before the interest rates goes up, we should. But that'll have to be a 2022 budget decision.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, call for vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. No. Okay, 5-minute break. Okay, thank you. We're moving on to number 7.1, notice of motion. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the lifting of the report on assistance on the Ottawa River, which was postponed on July 7, 2021, for discussion on October 20, 2021, with any suggested amendments to the agreement to be brought forward by staff. And this was recommended by Councillor Jackson, so we need a seconder, I believe. Okay, Reimbursement seconded. And this goes back to Rob?
To the mover, Councillor Jackson.
Oh, back to the mover. Councillor Jackson, please.
So as you know, this was on the table before, and it was set aside, or whatever it was, on July 7th. So this is just to bring it back for further discussion, and if there is anything further, because that was the intent of putting it aside in the first place. I don't think I have to say anything more than that.
Okay, so then we go to staff, which will be CAO.
Yeah, and we've talked about the language of the agreement and whether there's changes, and we've talked to the parties involved. So we'll be able to come back on October 20th and bring back the item and any new information.
Councillor Nicholson?
And sorry, just the other concern, just how do we make this a repeatable circumstance if it applies for another agency or something like that?
So the question is, we know, we'll address that when we come back, but we know historically we've gone to this provider for boats and drivers. So we're going back to the person we've dealt with in the past. If other people want to provide services to the township, they could come forward. One does not preclude the other. The other one is we're going to tighten up the definition of essential service and just make sure that it's a fee for service when required at the township's request. So that will all come back at the next meeting.
Okay, so we'll vote then on the motion coming back October 20. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Number 8.1, adoption.
There is other notices of motion. Perhaps we should go around.
Sorry, I was turned off. I forgot to ask if there were any other new notice of motions on the floor, so I see a hand from Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. Just the other day, and I'd like to make the flagpoles. That seems to be, to me, we need to get some kind of a report and decide what poles we need, what poles we don't need. I don't know if it needs to come in under a notice of motion, but I'm looking, I want to try and get some
clarity.
Thank you very much. That's the word I was looking for. With these poles, and if there's too many, let's remove them, let's get them down, and let's look after what we have. And if we can get a report on that, I would be greatly appreciated.
And Mr. Mayor, just to prevent a motion, I asked staff to do that. There's money set aside to fix some, but we have to have some decisions on eliminating some. Like there's some places there's 8. and there's other hamlets that don't have any. So I asked for a report on that, so we can make note of the minutes, but staff are working on a report to bring that forward. And there's money set aside for some maintenance, but a broader of where they are, how many we want, all that fun stuff is needed. So staff were working on that, and we'll note it in the minutes.
Okay, so do we have an anticipated time? Are we looking 6 months or 3 months or next
Probably
spring?
ahead of, before the end of the year, because there's some budget implications.
Yeah, because
And before we spend money, we've already budgeted on poles that maybe shouldn't be replaced.
Well,
So,
once
yeah.
the frost is in the ground, we can't do anything anyway. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor McLaughlin, you have your hand up.
I think you answered my question, because once the frost is there or cold weather comes, we're not going to do anything with them. But if we can at least get somewhere where we know what's going to happen, and let's get it done. That's basically what it is, because I know in Forster's Falls there's about 6.
Well, let's figure out how many of them we actually own. Maybe
yeah,
not necessarily.
Probably if we root around, we can find more.
Yeah.
Too.
But let's
anyway,
worry about that.
That's all I'm asking for, is to get some kind of report where they are, how many there are, and
who owns
what's
them.
really need them, and do we own them?
Yep. Okay, thank you. So do we need to vote on that, or we're good? Anyone else with notice of motion? Councillor Umstead?
Yeah, I have one, and I keep forgetting to bring it back to council, but about over a year ago, I was approached by some residents regarding restrictions on engine brakes, commonly referred to as Jake brakes, within Cobden limits. And I do know some work was done on it, and I think it was embedded in the noise bylaw that was defeated about 2-3 months ago, I believe. So just last week, as it turns out, I have been approached by a number of people again about it, and some of them are new residents up in the Wren subdivision that aren't used to the highway being there, I think. And a number of calls came on one night where I did hear a truck about 9:30 at night, and you would think that he was coming right down the middle of the lake. And I think he was coming from the Whitewater brewery side, and he howled on that thing until he went past my house. So I drive truck, and sometimes there's use for it, but most times there's not. So I'd like to put forward a motion to restrict engine brakes within the, I think Lane would have to do some calculations, but outside of, or at the top of the hill at Whitewater Brewery to the old, country kitchen restaurant. And as I've spoken to people about it, or people have brought it to my attention, a number of people that had no intention of bringing it forward said, yeah, they get ticked off when they hear those trucks all night. So I'd like to present that, please. Thank you.
Okay, so you're talking just Department of Highways then? Yeah. Okay. So that would mean then the CAO would have to send a letter. Okay. So you have that all typed in?
Yeah, so
Okay.
we'll work with the councillor for an actual motion to bring at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay.
I just want to say on that Jake brakes, I drove a truck out west for about 5 years, and a lot of companies won't hire your truck unless you have a Jake brake, because it saves the tires and it saves the wear on your tires, because the brake, usually the engine has a brake. But you'll see signs on the highway say, please revert from using your Jake brake, which is just common courtesy. But Cobden's in a valley both ways, and that's part of your problem.
And you'll discuss it further, Mr. Mayor, at the next meeting when the motion comes forward. If I could just say, this is just to give notice, not to debate the motion.
All right, so we can move on there to Councillor Jackson. You have a notice of motion?
Yeah, I'd like to bring forward a notice of motion regarding the composition of council, review the position of Reeve and Mayor, ask that the actual notice of motion be considered October 20th with a 30-day consultation as well.
Great, thank you. Clerk has that written down? Yeah. Anyone else? Notice of motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We'll move on to adoption of minutes, 8.1. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the minutes of September 15, 2021. Motion and a seconder, please. Voyageur and Councillor Jackson. All in favor? Thank you. Correspondence 9.1, Ottawa Valley Short-Term Plan Extension Notice, third OV Short-Term Plan. Item 10, Bylaws. I have no, oh, there it is. Recommendation, and be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the October 6, 2021 agenda be taken as read, and they start with 20-10-1429 and go to 21-10-1438. Motion and a seconder, please.
And Mr. Mayor, just before you get a mover and seconder, if we can pull 21-10-1436, the lease, to look at the tower, Councillor McLaughlin's issue about the towers and Councillor Jackson about the property taxes.
Excluding 21-10-1436?
Yes.
Okay. Did I get a motion and a seconder? Councillor McKay, you had your hand up. You're motioning. We need a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin, thank you. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Be ever so humble, we're adjourned at 7:38. Thank you very much, folks.